As we've seen recently, Call of Duty has gotten further and further away from reality. And if you don't know what I mean by this, you could look to the Ninja Turtles, you could look to Seth Rogen, you could look to a lot of things happening in the war of Call of Duty. But I wanted to take a step back and look at what Call of Duty does from time to time and used to do way more. And that is inserting reality, real battles, real world situations into their games. Now, a couple of easy examples of this is, if we're looking at the Black Ops universe, let's go back to the death of Alex Mason. This happened during a real world battle. They injected it right into a little thing called the Panama Invasion, something I would be more than happy to go into in a future video. But going over towards the Modern Warfare side of things, they did the same thing. Back in Call of Duty 4, they inserted Chernobyl into the game in a little known mission, and one of the most popular missions of all time, known as All Gillied Up. Now, generally speaking, when they do this, they do take an entire mission and base it off maybe something from a movie or something from the real world. This one that we're talking about today is going to be a little less in your face, and that is the Highway of Death.
Tariq al-Maut, the Highway of Death.
Now, there's two stories to this, how it fits into Call of Duty and how it fits into the story of the real world and then the crossover. So where we're going to start is with Call of Duty, and this is specifically from Modern Warfare 2019. To understand this, though, we have to go back to the year 1999. In 1999, Urzikstan, the place where Farah, Hadir, the ULF forces, and of course Al-Qatala are from, was invaded by a force known as Roman Barkov, or Barkov's forces. Now, they were invaded to try to be taken over, essentially, by Russia. Now, the Urzikstan Liberation Forces, the army in Urzikstan, rose up, but some people became extremists, becoming terrorists, and separated to another faction known as Al-Qatala, with a leader by the name of Omar Suleiman, aka the Wolf. Now, in Modern Warfare 2019, he carries out an attack on Piccadilly Circus and becomes more and more extreme. So people like Captain Price, Farah, and Alex are sent in to track him down, and eventually they do indeed capture him. When they capture him, they take him to the US Embassy within Urzikstan. However, some of the militia overwhelms it and they manage to break in. But while we try to defend the building that Omar Suleiman is in, he ends up getting broken out and then tries to escape Urzikstan, specifically through the Highway of Death.
Clear! All clear?
He's gone.
They breached the wall. Fucking hell. They got him, Captain. We will find him.
Hadir, get your team to the crossroads. Bring everything you've got.
Yes, sister.
What's the plan, Farah?
The Wolf is with the Butcher. Terrorist cells in the city will hide them. Bravo will clear house to house in search. My people will help you. If they try to escape to the mountains, there is only one road. Tariq al-Maut, the Highway of Death. The Russians bombed it during the invasion, killing the people trying to escape. There is a village at the crossroads. I sent Hadir and his fighters there to prepare an ambush. Alex and I will join them and take up firing positions above the road, lying in wait for the Wolf.
So they set up an ambush on the Highway of Death. Alex, Farah, and Hadir set up at a sniper point, whereas other Urzikstan Liberation Forces set up and get ready to ambush and wait for the Wolf to move through the highway. However, things end up going south and going downhill really fast when it is not just Al-Qatala who goes through the highway. Russia actually follows to take out the leader of Al-Qatala as well. So Barkov's forces end up coming, as well as Al-Qatala forces, and they end up overwhelming the Urzikstan Liberation Forces and end up overwhelming Farah, Alex, and Hadir. So Hadir goes to plan B. He goes to chlorine gas that he stole from the Russians, ends up using it, and essentially reveals himself for also being an extremist. But as you may notice throughout this mission, this highway was already destroyed. It was already littered with vehicles. And if you listen to the cutscene we heard before, they said that during the invasion of Urzikstan in 1999 is when this highway got destroyed. So for this, we must go back to the year 1999, the invasion of Urzikstan. Essentially, what ended up happening is Barkov ends up throwing in aerial attacks, launching chlorine gas, and trying to take over the entire area of Urzikstan. However, when this happens, the citizens try to escape the city into the mountains. And as we just found out, there's only one road into the mountains, the Highway of Death. So Barkov ends up also bombing the road out of the city to stop anyone from escaping, littering it with bodies, empty vehicles, burned down villages. And as it turns out, this is very similar to something that happened in the real world. Now, it's interesting that we're talking about this now because, as I mentioned, Modern Warfare 2019 takes place in 2019, but that invasion where the Highway of Death was created and the name came from happened in 1999. Well, as it turns out, the real-life Highway of Death came to be within the Gulf War, the exact time period that Black Ops 6 is based off of. This is the real-life Highway of Death. Shrapnel everywhere. Cars abandoned everywhere. Hundreds, thousands of people injured or killed. This is the real-life story of Highway 80, aka the Highway of Death. So in 1990, specifically August 2nd, 1990, a country by the name of Kuwait owed Iraq a lot of money, specifically from oil. And the leader of Iraq, by the name of Saddam Hussein, you may recognize that one, was a little bit mad about this. So he decided to invade Kuwait. And essentially, between Iraq and Kuwait, there is one road to get between them, a little highway called Highway 80. But here's the thing, Iraq had a much bigger military than Kuwait, and Kuwait knew that if they did nothing, they were going to get destroyed. So they called upon some friends. Because they had a whole bunch of oil money, they had friends with America, specifically the United Nations, but they called America and said, America, we need help. And, well, America was happy to oblige. And they basically gave Iraq an ultimatum. If they leave by January 15th, then we're all good. If they do not, well, here comes America. But it wasn't just America. It was America and 35 other countries. You see, Iraq had the fourth biggest military at the time, and 35 other nations apparently were not a big fan of them. So they happily obliged and joined together to create a coalition. And this led to something you may have heard of, something by the name of Operation Desert Storm. This was when the coalition moved in on the Iraqi army and basically completely decimated them. Now, the Iraqi army realized this and said, we need to get the crap out of here, and they started to leave. But remember, there was only one highway leaving Kuwait, Highway 80. So basically, all at once, the entire Iraqi army is leaving on said highway. So they were taking everything out of Kuwait, but Kuwait's worry was that they were going to come back again with the exact same equipment that they were currently leaving with. As it turns out, Coalition had an answer for that. It's a little thing called Scorched Earth. So the coalition started the attack with Apache helicopters, airplanes overhead, and just bombarded the front and back of the exiting convoy, leaving the vehicles in the middle completely trapped, and then systematically took them out one by one by one, leaving a massive pile of smoldering ash, abandoned vehicles, and it is hard to say to this day how many vehicles were actually destroyed and how many people were killed. But it seems as though that number is somewhere between 1,000 and 2,700 vehicles, and the number of people being around the same. Now, as some war photos started to get out of the incident, some people back in America started to realize how brutal this war actually was and started to question who really was the bad guy. And when this happened, a little known person of Colin Powell, yes, the person who was originally in the first Black Ops teaser but never came to be fruition in the game, stated that this war needed to end as public sentiment was starting to be pushed the other direction. And really, this event can be looked at as a flash in the frying pan, because it turns out that this was one of the events that led the little known person as Osama bin Laden to really start to see what was going on in the West, and could very well have led to what happened in the future. We all know what that was. So the differences between the two, both of which are a highway that was bombed to make people who were escaping stop. But the difference is, in Modern Warfare 2019, those people and cars who were bombed were civilians escaping a terror attack from Russia. Also, Urzikstan is supposed to represent a present-day Syria, not Iraq or Kuwait, whereas the real-world version was soldiers escaping from a losing war. Now, I think Highway 80 is a perfect example of how Call of Duty in the past has used real-world history and twisted it just a little bit to fit into their story. There are many, many examples of this, and if you would like to see more of them in a future video comparing the real world history to the history of Call of Duty, let me know by hitting that like button and maybe letting me know which missions, which stories you would like me to cover in the future down in the comments. But as always, I hope you enjoyed the video. Thank you so much for watching. Until next time, peace.